September 11th, 2001 started off as a beautiful Tuesday in New York City. There was not a cloud in the sky. It was not the type of day that one would imagine international terrorists attacking the United States of America. George W. Bush was the President of the United States. Richard Cheney was the Vice President. The Democrats ruled the Senate. The Republicans ruled the House. The economy was slowing down. The most popular TV show was Friends, and the most popular movie was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. David Joseph Fogel, the subject of this interview, was 41 years old and went to work as usual at the World Trade Center on this day. This is his story. David Joseph Fogel was born on August 9, 1960. He grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. His parents were Holocaust survivors. He is one of 3 siblings. He also has family in Israel and has traveled to the Middle East often to visit. Growing up, Fogel wanted to be a doctor. He went to Drew University in New Jersey. In 1985, Fogel married Ann Nancy Gottesman, who he met at college. They are married 30 years and now live in Florida with their daughter, Hope. In 2001, Fogel was working for a company called Waterhouse Securities. His office was located on the 24th floor in Tower 2, also known as the South Tower, of the World Trade Center building in Lower Manhattan. The main headquarters of the business was nearby at 100 Wall Street in Manhattan, New York City. Waterhouse Securities was being bought by another company, and he was working crazy hours. In the days leading up to and including 9/11, he worked until 2 to 3 in the morning. Usually, 18 other people worked with him in his office. However, because they were all working such late hours, only 3 people, including Fogel, were in the office when the first plane hit. The events on September 11th were conducted by 19 extremists from an international terrorist group called Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a terrorist group that in Arabic means the base. This group was led by a man named Osama bin Laden, who was angry towards governments that were not Islamic, like the United States. Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda wanted to force the United States military out of Islamic countries, including Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, and Somalia, by using violence. These extremists hijacked 2 planes from American Airlines and 2 planes from United Airlines. All of these planes were headed for California and departed from the East Coast. These flights included Flight 11, American Airlines, 175, United Airlines, 77, American Airlines, and 93, United Airlines. The hijackers purposely flew the planes into the Twin Towers. Flight 11 hit the North Tower at 8:45 a.m., and Flight 175 hit the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. The hijackers also intended for the planes to hit the Pentagon. Flight 77 hit the Pentagon's western part at 9:43 a.m. Lastly, Flight 93 crashed in a field in Pennsylvania at 10:10 a.m. because the passengers on the flight realized that the plane was hijacked. The passengers on that plane were heroes because they attacked the hijackers, knowing that this was a terrorist attack against the United States. This led to the plane crashing in an open field in Pennsylvania. No one knows where Flight 93 was supposed to hit, but there have been guesses that the aircraft was to crash into one of the major buildings in Washington, D.C., such as the United States Capitol building. These attacks were probably intended to show the world that Al-Qaeda was very strong and that the United States could be vulnerable. A commission was formed on November 2, 2002 by the President and Congress to discover and explain what happened during the 9/11 attacks and how the United States could prevent tragedies like this from happening again. About 3,000 innocent people were killed during the attacks. Fogel was one of the survivors on that day. As stated before, he was one of 3 people who came to work early that morning. The first thing he noticed that was odd was that the lights flickered. They never did that. He heard a high-pitched, very strange noise as well.
once the lights flickered, you heard the noise, the lights flickered, you saw a lot of little like confetti flying out of the windows. But we didn't know what it was. But my instincts, because I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, basically said we got to get the hell out of here. So there's no phone service.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, where's everybody and how are we going to locate them?
He sent his colleagues down the stairs, since they were on the 24th floor. Not thinking clearly, Fogel took the elevator and then realized that what he was doing wasn't smart. He got off at the nearest stop and took the stairs down.
Once he reached the bottom of the tower, most people were scared out of their minds. Unlike many survivors of the 9/11 attacks, Fogel was mentally prepared for dangerous events like this because he traveled to the Middle East in wartime. Not many people took lead because they didn't know what to do. Fogel, on the other hand, encouraged people to move on.
You're in a situation like that, and you see so many people and so many crazy things. When you hold up under such duress, it says a lot about the individual, your training. Right? Everything you do in your life leads up to certain moments when you're under tremendous pressure like that. And either you make it or you break it. And a lot of people broke, and a lot of people made it, but you'd be very surprised in those circumstances. The people you would think who would hold up, like security guards and authority figures involved, they're the people who actually crumbled. It was the little people who actually stood up and made the difference in those times.
Wow.
And my perception of the world changed, whereas I always thought New York City was a very cold place and very unfriendly, callous. And New York City around the world has a very, very bad reputation of being hard, and I found it to be the exact opposite. When in a situation like that, the people in New York City were the nicest, the kindest people. There were people, as you're walking, there's no mode to go back to where I lived in New Jersey. So what I had to do was walk from the bottom of Manhattan, because there's no boats, there's no trains, there's no bridges, because everything was shut down. I had to walk from the bottom of Manhattan to the top to George Washington Bridge.
Wow.
And there were merchants there giving away sneakers, food, drink to people who were coming, walking basically north. There was so much kindness there. I've never experienced it. So we're near the irony is that New York City has the cliches. Because I was calm, because I wouldn't call it training, but my experiences, I was trying to explain to people, you got to move forward. You can't just sit here. And we don't even know what's happening yet, but people are afraid. So we're moving forward. Some people said, well, I think I'd rather just stay here. Some people were following me. I said, we have to just get out of here. That in itself was a separate, I'm recalling this, so I'm hyperventilating a little bit. The guy wearing the hat, he's wearing all his Australian clothes. He has this really heavy Australian accent. And he's screaming, this is true. I couldn't make this stuff up. Come over here in this accent. And I'm like, what? And there were a small set of steps and a very small escalator to get to that exit. It was the main entrance. And people didn't know where to go. And I just listened to him. And he's like, come over here, let's go. So I went up, I just followed. You have to bend around the street to go to see what's happening. Everyone's huddled on the sidewalks. You don't know what's happening, but people are looking up. And as you go further up that street, you can see on World Trade Center 1, in the top of the building, there were just flames and smoke coming out from the top. A lot of stuff coming. And as I'm walking to go into the crowds to find out where are my people, maybe they showed up and now they're outside, or am I going to go back in and get them to see if they're there? Plane 2 goes in, and it goes into probably about 14 floors above where we were, but it's in front of you, so you're not outside. I'm on Maiden Lane facing World Trade Center 2, and
is a hard question to ask, but were any of your friends killed or injured?
I had a very good friend who just left our firm and went to a firm called Cantor Fitzgerald. They were a big trading firm that were in World Trade Center 1, and he was just engaged. I went to his engagement party a couple weeks beforehand, and he wasn't supposed to be at work that day, and he went in that day, and he was gone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And they had pictures posted everywhere. People were looking for lost ones. It was very hard to watch because there were plasters. You ever see, perhaps in your neighborhood, where
Yeah.
Well, imagine 100-fold everywhere in Manhattan. Okay, from the bottom of Manhattan to the top of Manhattan.
Oh.
You couldn't go back to lower Manhattan because it smelled so bad.
Oh.
It was a very bad. That's where a lot of these people are sick because of the noxious fumes that were released from all the chemicals involved.
Yeah.
It smelled really bad. So I didn't go back to lower Manhattan, but there were pictures plastered everywhere, looking for. It was very difficult.
Oh, that's terrible. Oh my god.
And as for a side effect, the only thing I did, my side effect was, if there was a low-flying plane, I would flip. So if I'm driving and I see a plane that looks like it's about to land on, pretty close to me, I would stop the car and, not in the middle of the road, of course.
Mm.
I'd pull over. So I had a little bit of, if I see a low plane, I would flip out a little bit.
Oh.
I still do a little bit. I'm going to school now, and my school is pretty close to the airport. So
wow.
I was, yeah, so I didn't expect to have any residual effects all these years later, but I'm at a meeting, or it was after a meeting, a gathering after a meeting at school, and I'm looking out the window for a second because it's beautiful, and this low-flying plane's coming in, lower than usually, because it's so, I didn't realize how close the school was to the airport in Fort Lauderdale. I took a double take. I wasn't expecting that at all. So there are some residual effects.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
pretty much it. Government, in terms of security.
I mean, like, the government, like George Bush and, like, the decisions, because, like, invading Iraq and stuff.
The government's response, I think, was valid because there were a lot of people who wanted revenge. And we wanted to know who it was that attacked us, why did they attack us, what we could do to stop them, and how do we do that? Do we secure ourselves or do we go after them? Go in for the right reasons? Yes. Did we do what we had to do? No, not to the extreme.
Later.
Do you really want me to answer that?
Yes.
I think it was not to be as celebrated as it had to be. I don't think he single-handedly did something. He did not launch the planes. He was involved with it, but he was a sick man. I think he was given a lot more. America always needs to have a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, you think of all the wars and all the things we've ever been involved in. We always have to have a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So did he single-handedly do all these bad things to us? And by killing or capturing or kidnapping or jailing him, would we have solved the problem? No. So was I happy that they got him? No, not necessarily, because he is just, we pinned it on one person without realizing or thinking through that there's a lot more to it than just one person who created that there's a whole network of people and groups that cooperated to execute what they did with great efficiency. We were lax in our own security, but by taking care of one person does not cure the problem.
The events of September 11th, 2001 impacted the world in many ways. For example, strangers risked their lives for others that day. Families were torn apart. People to this day are still suffering from illnesses because of breathing in the bad air. Transportation changed. Now in airports, people have to take off their shoes and remove their coats and hats. They also have to keep their liquids in small containers in a clear plastic bag. The cockpits in airplanes are now locked. Laws changed and the Department of Homeland Security was formed. The War on Terror began as the United States first invaded Afghanistan and then Iraq. Fogel was a survivor of the terrorist attacks on 9/11. He was a hero who tried to get people to leave the towers and made sure his co-workers were accounted for and safe.